And use this as an excuse to be the person that you are today.
Because unfortunately, the things that I went through when I was younger, which I only recently found out a couple years ago, led me to have literally brain deformities, which is what is caused borderline personality disorder.
Hello, 'tis I, a fat cow. Oh, Amber, I think you used the wrong word. Yeah, your brain wasn't, damaged or destroyed or deformed by your childhood trauma. It's not as direct as that, shall we say. So, let's get into it, shall we? Let's clear up a few things and kind of debunk the new language that Amber has learned off TikTok, revolving around BPD and childhood trauma and various other things. Firstly, Amber, during the live, was rocking from side to side, which is actually quite a common mechanism for self-soothing during stressful incidences. But was she actually dissociating, or was it slightly more performative? Well, to an outsider, a dissociative episode can look like the following. Usually staring vacantly and being unresponsive. Now, one of the things I'd like to point out was, while Amber was kind of vacant, she was very aware of what was being said and was very quick to respond to the particularly egregious accusations and claims, which indicates she was listening and present the entire time. There can be a sudden shift in mood and behaviour, but there always is with Amber. They can express confusion about your location, the time, your identity, and there wasn't much of that apart from a singular "I don't know" in response to a question that was particularly tricky, I must admit. You could claim not to recall things as accurately as the other person, but that's not necessarily dissociative too. It could just be a poor memory, or, well, literally just not remembering it the same way as another person, because, as you know, all events are filtered through our eyes and our idea of how things are, and one's personal experience of an event can be entirely different than another person's experience of the exact same event. And they can exhibit behaviours that are completely out of character, and, well, Amber was very much in character. Again, the rocking back and forth could be a method of self-soothing during periods of stress. However, I don't recall this behaviour ever being displayed before. It's very new. It manifested quite recently, and to me seems to be to me, my opinion, not a fact, a tad performative. Amber seemed to fluctuate in and out from becoming dissociative to grounded and present. And this happened quite frequently, particularly when the questions were more scandalous or the statements were more scandalous. Now, while the fluctuating in and out from being not there to being grounded and back and forward does happen during episodes, the frequency that was displayed was somewhat convenient, let's say. People with BPD do experience the symptom of dissociation. In fact, 80% of people with BPD does this. But again, we don't necessarily know that Amber legitimately has BPD, because a lot of the things she displays could be due to CPTSD and some other things that I will bring up shortly. Also, it's worth noting that the adult brain doesn't reach full maturity till the age of 25, and that childhood trauma can delay the brain's maturing. It's called the brain age gap, as in your brain age and your physical age do not align, and childhood trauma can delay that. So a 25-year-old who has experienced trauma can have the emotional intelligence of someone significantly younger. But one's got to note that being young or mentally immature is not an excuse for being a bad person. One could argue that beyond the age of 12, we have some cognitive, abilities to differentiate right from wrong. I mean, even younger than 12 then. Unless, of course, the person with the maturity of the brain also has developmental delay and some significantly lower cognitive abilities, let's say, which Amber, while not being the smartest person in a room, the sharpest tool in the box, doesn't have those levels that in a court of law would immediately render any accusations as being unfounded due to an inability to understand right from wrong. So, can childhood trauma cause, in Amber's words, brain deformities, or as I will call it, damage, because it's pretty much what she's implying? Childhood trauma can lead to long-lasting changes in brain structure and function, impacting the child's emotional, mental and physical well-being. But the actual physical brain in itself is not damaged in the way that a brain would be damaged by a physical trauma such as a head injury. It's less damage or deformation than it is the brain adapting neurologically. Childhood trauma can shrink the hippocampus, which is responsible for memory and learning. It can also affect the prefrontal cortex, which is the executive function in decision making and emotional regulation. So both the hippocampus and the prefrontal cortex are smaller in some individuals that have experienced childhood trauma. And the amygdala, which is responsible for your fear center, is enlarged, which leads to bigger responses, let's say. So the childhood trauma that Amber claims, because there is no proof to have experienced, could be causing symptoms that appear as BPD but isn't. It's a result of the trauma. It's not a diagnosed personality disorder. So I'm saying Amber has BPD-like traits, but that can be attributed to other things. The good news is that therapy has shown immense promise in reversing some of these issues. Everything I mention can be improved dramatically with therapy if you took it. If you actually did it and did it properly and committed yourself to it, everything that you are struggling with, Amber, can be alleviated to a certain extent with therapy. You are allowing yourself to struggle. You are monetizing your struggle. You are actually more comfortable struggling because maybe you don't know what being mentally well feels like. Maybe the idea scares you, or maybe you legitimately don't want to be well because you're less interesting without these issues. You can learn to manage your symptoms and your responses to situations. Again, Amber, you are allowing yourself to struggle for whatever reason, but you are allowing yourself to struggle and not making any attempt to get better. In fact, I would argue your attempts to get better mentally are about as genuine and obviously successful as your attempts to lose weight. They're performative. They are token gestures to appease other people because you in yourself is bizarrely happier being both mentally unwell and obese. Final thing, Amber. Someone in your chat said you have destroyed your body, for which you took very great offence. Your mind instantly went to your appearance, though, because, well, your appearance and how you're perceived is significantly more important to you than your physical or mental health. But what the person meant by saying you damaged your body was that you have physically caused damage to various parts of your body and your internal organs that will not be repaired even if you lost weight. You have significantly shortened your lifespan. You have destroyed your skeleton, your joints, and your ability to function properly physically. That comment had nothing to do with your appearance, because you assume every comment made about you has to do with your size and your weight, when arguably most people's issues with you are due to your personality. And you claiming that the majority of people who are not on your side are wrong is a statistical improbability, because if I walked into a room and out of the 10 people there, 9 of them didn't like my tattoos and 1 person did. If I focused on the 1 person who liked my tattoos and then said, well, everybody likes my tattoos because that person does, I'm ignoring what we call the majority. And a majority opinion, while not necessarily accurate, is a very good indication of how you're perceived and your actual character. You can pick and choose who you choose to believe on the internet, but the numbers do not lie.